Welcome, everyone, to the second of the Fall Spoken and Heard events, sponsored by the City of Athens, Ohio, and Arts West. Many thanks to the sponsors. And for those of you who do not know me, I am Carrie Gunter Seymour, and I'm the Poet Laureate of Ohio. And I'm so pleased and excited to be here with all of you tonight. Scott and Ryan both are here with us from the City of Athens as technical support this evening. And I can tell you they have already earned their wages tonight. They've been working very hard and they are literally running the show, as they say. Tonight's event is being recorded, and so I'd like to let you all know that. And it's streamed live right this very minute from Facebook and will be archived on the City of Athens YouTube and the City of Athens government channel 1024. And that way you can view it later if you'd care to or share with friends. So I have a couple of announcements. I'd like to mention that next month on November 19th at 6 p.m. for the next Spoken and Heard event, which will be the last of the fall series, we're featuring selections of poetry and prose from the most recent issues of the Literary Journal of the Southern Appalachian Writers Cooperative, Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, volumes 22, Appalachia Unbroken, and volume 23, Appalachian Edge. And we have about 15 readers from throughout Appalachia, but many of them from the Athens area proper. So that's November 19th at 6 p.m. And I will eventually put that in the chat box for all of you. Also, for those of you who don't know, I do offer a monthly generative writing workshop. And next up is Scars. And that's on October 20th at 7, usually lasts a couple of hours. It's a $15 registration fee, and I'll put information in there as to how to register for that class. And look for one of those every month, and you can find them on my website as well, carriegunterseymourpoet.com. So we do have two outstanding writers tonight, but unfortunately we had an invasion earlier on as we were setting up our event, and one of our readers was removed, and she's having some problems getting back in. So we may just be rejoicing in having the wonderful Bonnie Proudfoot with us tonight to read, and that will be wonderful. After the readings, we'll have a short Q&A, a couple of questions, and then after that, I invite a handful of people to consider joining in the what I'm calling the pop-up mic. After you hear our featured reader or readers, if you have a poem, a short story, or a song that carries on the same theme or stream of consciousness, I invite you to act in a Zen sort of way, taking turns sharing one selection of your work as it seems right and good for the whole of the evening. So let us begin, and thank you all again for coming, and especially for those of you who hung out through our very difficult time. Bonnie Proudfoot received an MA from West Virginia University and a second MA in creative writing from Hollis University in Roanoke. She was awarded a fellowship for the arts and creative writing from the West Virginia Department of Culture and History for a novel in progress. And that novel, Goshen Road, has now been published by Ohio University's Swallow Press. Yay! Her fiction and poetry has also appeared in journals including the Gettysburg Review, Kestrel, Quarter After 8, Sheila Nagig, and Essentially Athens, Ohio, edited by yours truly, and is forthcoming in Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. A short story was recently awarded first prize in the 2020 Sand Hills National Fiction Competition. I'm sure Bonnie will tell you about that as well. Bonnie currently teaches part-time for the Department of English at West Virginia University. When she is not writing or grading papers, she can be found playing blues harmonica or working on glass art in her studio in Athens. So I first met Bonnie back in the 90s when we were both serving on the board. We were both board members of the Foothills School of Arts and Crafts. And Bonnie was an extraordinary glass artist and still is. And I didn't even realize really that she was writing, that she was teaching, of course. So I knew she was a writer, but wasn't as familiar with her work at that time. But when I think of all that has been accomplished over the years, that she has accomplished over the years, students served, the poems she has written, the completion of Goshen Road, I get goosebumps. And friends, let me tell you, the woman does play a mean mouth harp. Maybe we'll get lucky and she'll consider bringing it out, because we're going to have a little extra time tonight if Carter is unable to rejoin us. So please, please join me in welcoming the extraordinary, wonderful Bonnie Proudfoot by a show of waving hands or confetti fingers or whatever you're able.
Thank you very much, Carrie. That was a heck of an introduction. And I want to say thank you to all the Jedis in the spaceship tonight who vanquished the villains and kept us from descending into the dark path. You guys were phenomenal. Thanks to the city of Athens. And really, it's an honor to be invited. I'm delighted. I'm going to read a little bit from a couple of sections from my novel, Goshen Road, that was Carrie mentioned. The novel is written as a series of linked narratives, so that many of the chapters stand alone as short stories, and several of the characters get a chance to speak, and their voice can be heard through the chapters. So sometimes the point of view changes. Sometimes it's third person omniscient. Sometimes it's first person. And I'm going to read two sections from two chapters that are first-person narrators, but not the same narrator, if that makes sense. So the first section I'm going to read is there are two couples that are central to the novel, two sisters married two different fellows, and one of the fellows is named Lux, and he marries Desi and Desi Price, and then Billy, and she marries Alan Ray. But tonight, Lux and Desi are going to speak to you. So I'll read a section from chapter 3 and then another section from chapter 5. I might read all of chapter 3. So chapter 3 is called In a Flash, and it takes us back to 1967. And if you were alive back then, things were pretty different, especially in rural West Virginia where this book is set. And this is a time in Lux's life when he is 18 years old. And so he narrates, and it's called In a Flash. And just what you need to know in the background of this, Bertram is Desi's father. Rose is her mother. They show up briefly. Billy is her younger sister. Alan Ray is Lux's best friend and has not yet proposed to Billy. And that's basically the characters that you need to know. Also, there's a couple of different things that Lux makes reference to. He has just lost his eye in a logging accident, so we need to know that as well. Here we go. And chapter 3 counts down like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. You'll hear. That's a thing he does. He was a baseball pitcher, and he does a countdown to settle his nerves. We find out about that. So 10. Saturday, the 20th of May, 1967. The morning's so hot, the sweat drains down my spine. I sit back against the driver's seat. Desi riding shotgun, off we go. Heading up a logging road to the summit of Chestnut Ridge, stopping after we crest the ridge top. A field of hay waves in the breeze, spring green, tassels shining, the morning sun above us, not a cloud in the sky and not a soul in sight. My arm across her shoulder, her arm across my waist, our bodies fitting together. We make our way across the long, narrow ridgetop field. From the far edge of the field, a trail weaves through the pine woods. The forest floor slopes down on the right as well as on the left. The trail narrows, the trees turn scrawny, and finally the woods give over to sky. The hillside drops off on both sides of the path. The soil changes to flat stepping stones of crumbling shale. We stand at the edge of a wind-swept cliff. A couple 100 feet below, Decker's Creek shimmers in the sunlight. A red-tailed hawk soars overhead, then swoops a wide circle toward the tree canopy beneath us in the valley. 9. Alan Ray sits at the AMVETS, holding America's Best, a PBR. He is smoking his last Marlboro. The crumpled pack and his last $3 are on the bar. He stares at me like I'm off my nut. You already lost an eye. Now you want to cut your balls off too? Go ahead then, he says. Just don't let me find out you dropped down on one knee and begged for it. Then he says, what the hell? It's your life. Hey, I'll buy. Drink up while you still can. 8. My mother counted her babes like the months of the year, the ones she had and soon after lost. In January, Peter. In February, Ruth. In March, Mark. In April, April. Named after the month she was born and the month she died. All laid out little graves, field stones in a row up the hill, a gate of saplings wired together by Pa, some plastic flowers that bloom forever. Then I came along, the one who lived, the one who sucked her teeth right out of her mouth, as she used to say. She loved us equal, those who lived for only a day or two, those who lived a year, and me, walking on the shoulders of the other 4. She called me Luther. She said it sounded holy. After me, 2 more gone, Simon, Eliza, then the stones were laid side by side for her and the one who did not receive a name. 7. Bertram stands beside his workbench in the barn. He and I puzzle over how to get the carburetor off the International Harvester in the hopes that we can replace that fouled intake manifold and get the old SOB to keep running once it starts. He cracks a grin, tells me, you can't just have her hand, Ace. You got to take the whole package. Later, with Bertram at my side, Rose sits on the piano bench. A narrow silver cross made from hand-hewn framing nails is mounted on the wall on a pine plaque. Her gray owl eyes meet mine. She says, there is a right way and a wrong way to do these things, Luther. Then she says, do you mean to be a proper Christian husband to Dorothy? Will you be baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? And will you take the Lord into your life as your Savior? 6. As a boy, I used to race to keep up with my mother. I used to watch the backs of her legs. Her straight-seamed stockings knotted at the knees as she knelt in the church pew, the tied bow of an apron behind her waist as her Sunday heels clacked from room to room on our milled pine floor, swirls of dust in shafts of light. As I grew older, both she and Pa began to change. Her fingers shriveled like bent twigs. His steel-gray eyes narrowed to slits as if the light of day would scar them. Her slim face sagged. Deep grooves chiseled her brow. Hollows dug into her cheeks. His beard grew white in shapeless strands. Bit by bit, the knotted cord that held her slight form together began to fray. One night, a month before she passed, Pa took the cast-iron skillet to her when she served supper too cold, and I laid into him. By that time I was almost 14, as strong as he was and a head taller and sober. I knocked him flat and drug him into the forge to sleep it off, locking the house door against him. I cleaned the floor, wiped the walls, set her down with a cool wash rug on her brow. From then on, I slept with a baseball bat under my bed, though I was not afraid. The day I first felt fear, the day the pounding in my chest began, was the day I lost my compass and began spinning free. It was the day my mother, my loving mother, died. 5. We take it all in. She holds my hand tightly, a little out of breath, but pleased to stand beside me. I could tell by her broad smile, the excitement in her eyes. She would be the one to take me forward into life. I could no more stop than I could stop my own birth, than I could stop the locust limb that took my eye, than I could keep my mother's spirit in her body, than I could stop loving this sweet girl. I reach for it all. I say, Des, what if we wanted to get us some land? She shakes her head like she was trying to get the sense of my words. I feel bold to even try. I feel scared to get it wrong. I feel the weight of each beat of my cowardly heart. She looks up at me. She says, Lux, what in the world are you going on about? Do you mean like a business? Like we buy us a little farm somewhere? I know what I have to do. I have to say the words to make it real. Under the bluest of all skies, in the brightest light of high noon, and the spirit of my mother with me at all times, I look at Desi. Well, I suppose we'd probably have to get married then, I say, stepping back up the trail a good yard or so to give her room, not because I wanted to, but because the words push me. They drive a space between us, a space as solid as my fear. She is quiet. The breeze holds off. The air is still, the only sound the drum of a woodpecker on a hollow tree behind us. Lux, did you just say what I thought you said? She asks. 4. No one knows for sure what took my mother's mortal soul. They think her heart gave out. She laid herself down in the middle of the day, pulled up the quilt, and passed from this earth on the 10th of September, 1964, while Pa was on the porch in his rocking chair, swigging from a bottle, and I was at school, too far away to hear if she cried out for help. That fall, Pa slept on the porch in his rocker, swore he wasn't asleep when I tried to wake him to come to bed. When the moon was right and he was well, he and I went coon hunting, a momentary truce, halfway up some logging road, or setting out the night beneath that hit-and-miss gas well, drinking and waiting for the hounds to bay and the chase to begin. He'd run on about fighting in France and Italy. Though he'd never admit it, the more time we spent together, the more I knew that he wanted me to take on his place, make his untended acres produce once more. Take him on, too, prove to him that he could trust me, keep him from himself, agree with him that everyone was trying to get the better of him. I never knew what would set off that stick of dynamite buried in his gut, but I knew it had a short fuse. My mother would tell me that she passed from this earth into the arms of her Savior. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's for the best. She would tell me that when I find my Savior, there I will find her. I know she left when she could no longer stay, that she did everything she could. I failed her, but she did not fail me. 3. On the prettiest day of the prettiest month, under the bluest sky, my sweet, beautiful, blue-eyed girl says yes. There is no other sound like this, not even the sound of a perfect strike, the way it hits the glove of the catcher. Her one word, yes. I have pitched a no-hitter. I have hit Grand Slam home runs, the ball soaring over the stands and into the junkyard beyond center field fence, kids scrambling, the ball bouncing off the roofs of rusted-out sedans, but I have never known this feeling before or since. She looks at me. She gets quiet. My chest pounds. Maybe she will change her mind, but she doesn't. Instead, she says, Lux, we have to do it right. Marry in a church. My Desi, whose mind is clear and steers my heart, I will do it, I said, the pounding in my chest, the sound of the gears of my heart reaching for the gears of her heart. I swear it. I will stare into the eyes of my pa, and I will set this before him, one man to another. My best girl, I have nothing to be afraid of with you by my side. 2. I reach into my shirt pocket. I have a treasure. It's a perfect, soft gray bird point, an arrowhead, chip-flaked and as sharp as it was 500 years ago. I braided a buckskin cord into the notches at the base of the point. I tell her, I was a boy, walking behind my mother on the ridge trail, on the way to pick wild blackberries. I saw it among the broken rocks at my feet. It stopped me in my tracks. I bent, picked it up, raced to catch up. Desi places my gift over her lovely head, this ancient gray point against her skin, resting in the hollow of her neck. Mother, you came to me, tugged at the hair on the crown of my head. You guided my hands as I braided this cord. 1. My name is Luther, but only on my paycheck, my hunting license, my birth certificate, and in my mother's mouth, as it will be on my baptism certificate and my marriage license. My name is Lux. Things can change. I know that to be true. I have been spinning free, a wheel with not a cog to hold it. Then, in a flash, I am part of a great machine, spinning like a gear that drives another gear, and so on until the world is put right. They will take me to the river, and they will wash me clean from sin. My mother, who art in heaven, hallowed be her name. She called me Luther. I will be saved for you, mother, saved for you, my Desi, the light I carry in my heart. My girl and I stand together. The world is wide open. The world is new for our life together. In a flash, things can change. I know that my eye was the price I paid. I once was blind. I could say that it was like watching my old life slip through my fingers. Now I can see. It feels like reaching for a second chance. My hair will be so short that my head will feel naked. My shoes will be so tight that I will barely feel the earth beneath me. Water will stream over my forehead. It will seep under my eye patch, and it will fill the socket of my eye. It will remind me. So that's chapter 3. I don't know how we're doing for time and all, but I thought I'd read that. Let's see. Was that about 20 minutes?
That was wonderful, Bonnie. Truly wonderful. And so I'm thinking now maybe everyone might have a few people might have a question. And so if you do, I hope this will work. People could click on their muted mic, and then either Scott or Ryan will open your mic. And if not, we may have to type them into the chat. So I'm not sure which. Can Ryan or Scott, can you advise me on that as to whether we should simply type them into the chat box?
There should be a raise your hand function over in the participant list. And we'll just do, as people raise their, and I see the little blue hand pop up, then I'll unmute your mic.
Okay.
All right. So here we go.
So if you would like to ask a question, I see Stephanie Kendrick has her hand up. So she would be the first.
Hi, Bonnie. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I have loved reading your book. I'm wondering, because I also know that you're a fantastic poet, and I didn't know about you that you also wrote fiction. So how does your process differ from writing poetry and sitting down and working on a much longer, bigger project?
That's a great question. Thanks, Stephanie. I think I have always written poetry, but I got extremely lucky when a long time ago when I decided to go to college for a creative writing master's degree. I sat in on a fiction reading, and it was a women's reading, and it was students of a teacher named Gail Galloway Adams, and she was so fantastic, and her students were so fantastic that I sort of said, hey, maybe I should start writing fiction and just do poetry in the sort of background in my spare time and study with Gail. So I think I was drawn to work with this teacher, and then I started to look around me for story making material. And I think you get a spark, and then the spark tells you whether you're going to write a story or you're going to write a poem. I tend to be narrative in my poetry also. So, but if I can see the dramatic tension rising, I sort of know, the story is coming. But great question.
Thanks, Bonnie. I appreciate that answer, because that is a question I've actually had in my own mind. So I'm glad Stephanie thought to ask that question. I'm trying to look here if I have anything that, Wendy's saying Gail Adams. Yes. Yeah. That's just pretty amazing. Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions for Bonnie that you're interested in knowing, or anything about the reading or where to get her book? That might be a good thing for us to ask. Bonnie, where can we purchase your book?
So I'm a big fan, of course, of independent bookstores. And if you live in Athens, just pop on over to Little Professor. And for a while, he was even delivering books in town. I'm not sure if he does that, but I'm sure that it's wonderful, pristine, clean, and fantastic. He'd probably meet you outside to deliver the book by hand. And so definitely do that in Athens. Or actually, you can go to a website called IndieBound. And IndieBound is a place that lists all the independent bookstores.
It looks like Tamara has been unmuted. I think she has a question.
Oh, I was just going to thank you, Scott. I was going to ask, you said about getting a story idea. Where did you get your idea? Can you tell us about that? What flashed into your mind? And by the way, your reading was great. Loved it.
Oh, thank you, Tamara. Do you say Tamara? Tamara? But thanks. So I didn't start out to write a novel. I wrote a couple of short stories. I lived way back in the backwoods in Wetzel County, West Virginia. The novel set a little bit before I moved back there, but I moved down to West Virginia in 1979 and got a full immersion, I think, in rural West Virginia life. And to be honest, my ex's family are all native West Virginians. So really just visiting their families, and they welcomed me warmly. And I began to really think about the women who live there. And I wanted to write something that really expressed the admiration, but also that I felt for people, and also demonstrated what life was like in ways that I thought that, I didn't want to feel like I was telling secrets that belonged to someone else, but I wanted to be sort of open to whatever inspirations and put myself in a situation as if I lived there. And I did live there. So to honor the friendships that I made, and also to recognize how unusual and how hard women strove in those days to keep a whole farm together, and what life was like. And I saw that time period as like sort of an important cusp of when rural tradition, like there were people who knew medicine plants, and there were people who had learning based on sort of a lot of folk tradition. But it was starting to slide away by the time I moved, and less people were practicing. So yes, there were still home births, but they were becoming less and less common, right? So I thought if I set this into the past a little bit, I had an ability to show some of the culture. So after I wrote a couple of stories, I waited a little while, and I thought, these characters still want to talk more. And then I worked backwards and forward. So I worked, what would their past be like, and what would their future be like? So the novel spans 30 years.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks.
So do we have any other questions? Because I'm looking here and I'm not seeing anyone else's hand, but if you wave your hand, go back to gallery here. Anybody? Okay. Why don't we have a short pop-up open mic for those of you who feel like you have a piece that would add to the conversation tonight concerning Appalachia and family and young couples and losing a mother and rural living, weddings. I mean, there's a lot of topics here that you could go on and off to. And I'm thinking Tamara is looking. I know she's got something because she always has a little something up her sleeve tonight. I bet you Stephanie has something. I bet you Jean has something. Maybe Dan has a song for us. Maybe Bonnie will play her mouth harp, which would be wonderful. No, okay. Yeah, it's really hard to read and then perform music on the same night, I'm sure, because one's nerves can only take quite so much, right? But in honor of Bonnie's lovely reading, if any of you do have something you'd like to share, Tamara, did you find something? I think she's saying yes. So can we unmute Tamara? Oh, you're saying no. Okay, let me see. Okay,
And
Stephanie's
you
going
can
to
either
try.
raise your hand or you can type it in the chat if you'd like to speak as well.
And Stephanie says she will try, even though her internet's a little bit unstable. So if you can unmute Stephanie Kindred. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try here. So this is it's seasonal, and it's also very much about women and mothers in Appalachia. So preservation. The ground is covered in dead leaves and weeds we name violet or thistle, and women I know gather them for jellies and post photos of dandelion syrup on curated Instagram pages under a filter of nostalgia. My mother has been making masks for neighbors and attaches a warning that the fabric will not save, and her fingers guide the needle around the edges in straight lines that remind her of death and the parts of her she shields herself from. The thread is silver, and the secret is that each time she plucks a strand from her scalp, she smiles again, and her own mouth is covered, so there is no proof, and I think I can feel it from here. The way a flower wilts as soon as it's torn from roots, and as soon as the sun leaves, like maybe tonight is the night it will stay. Women I know still pluck petals like their lives depend on it, saving spring sweetness to hold them over once the cold settles.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm unmuted now. This is this is fun, isn't it? We're all having to do sort of some juggling while we participate. We've gotten so used to just being able to go as we please. So I'm trying to see here. Chuck Salmons would like to read. So if we could unmute Chuck, that would be wonderful. And Chuck is the president of the Ohio Poetry Association. I'm sure he would rather I not say that, but I have to brag on him because he has spent these last many, many, many years building up this organization. And it is an incredible organization now. And they provide, yes, people are applauding you, Chuck. They do a yearly anthology. They hold quarterly workshops and business meetings. They have a huge picnic gathering in the summers. They do additional anthologies depending on what's going on. They host the Sun and Moon Festival. I could go on and on. I guess I should let Chuck tell a little bit too, but he's an amazing human being and an absolutely amazing poet who has received an individual artist award from the Ohio Arts Council. With that said, Chuck, take it away.
Well, thank you, Carrie. Yeah, I guess for OPA, our next event is actually tomorrow night when we have our virtual book launch for our latest anthology, Eclipsing the Dark, which is poetry by those poets who have been featured at our Sun and Moon Poetry Festival in past years. And because of the pandemic, we couldn't have the festival this year. So, we thought, well, the anthology would be the next best thing, as we'll try to bring some of the work of those poets to people. So if you visit our website, Ohio Poetry, ASSN.org, and I'll put that in the chat here in a moment. But if you go to our website or our Facebook page, you can find out details. We're going to broadcast that reading on the Sun and Moon Poetry Festival Facebook page. So you can just tune in to watch tomorrow evening if you want to hear some great some great poems. So I thought I would dig back into the past, at least as far as, well, both how old this poem is and the story behind it goes back a number of years. My grandfather was from MacArthur, Ohio, was one of 9 kids and a Depression era baby. So he never had much growing up, and even the day he died, he didn't really have much. So I sort of relished in spending time with him and just listening to his stories and learning how to cook a few things as well. So this poem sort of honors both of those experiences that I shared with him. The poem is titled, "Grandfather Teaches Me to Make Biscuits." Potatoes and green beans simmer 4 hours now. Pork loin sizzles. First comes flour and soft butter in a glass bowl etched by his mother's modest diamond. He stirs slowly. A wooden spoon turns the mixture into itself like a wave. Then he pours milk from memory, his eye measuring the fleshy mound. He dusts a sheet of foil with flour and kneads a lumpy sphere. He tells me his mother learned to cook after her mother died. At age 8, she stood on an overturned dynamite box brought home from the mines by her brothers. The boys returned each night, faces and arms black with Ohio coal dust, and devoured biscuits and beans. He tells me that in Korea, beans were always bland. Biscuits were always cold and hard, like the winters. He says, always bake biscuits in an iron skillet, like the one his mother handed down. He says, always cook beans slowly, with potatoes and pork, with the care a farmer takes to grow them. His hands shiver and press the dense dough into a pale pancake. With an empty tin can, he cuts biscuits, slides them into the oven. Our arms and brows bead with sweat. The fan above stirs a salty scent. Grandfather talks as biscuits begin to rise. Thank you.
My goodness, Chuck, that was just beautiful. And as all of these beautiful poems have been absolutely perfect to carry on after Bonnie's gorgeous work. Doc, do you have one for us tonight? Doc Janning, there we go.
I think so. It ties in with the one person who was standing looking down a hillside at the beginning of her poem. So we'll see. It's titled Tears of My Soul. I stand on a bluff looking out over the lake, watching as the storm rolls in and lightning plays all about. I smell the ozone, hear and feel the thunder as it rumbles deep within. I'm in awe of nature's power as it stirs me and resounds throughout my soul. Then the wind picks up. I feel its force and lift as it tugs me. It says, come with me. Let yourself go. I inhale, spread my arms to become wings, but I am held back. And the rain is the tears of my soul.
Hey, Karen Scott, do you have oh, sorry, Doc.
I hope that wasn't too far off base.
Karen Scott, do you have something for us tonight? No. Okay. Anybody else? We could probably do with one more. Nobody? Oh, Haley's turned her mic on, which means she's ready to read. Yay! Haley Mitchell Huggan is the publisher of my book and is the creator and editor and publisher at Sheila Nagig. And she has published many of the poets that we have here tonight, and just so fortunate to have her and her all-woman small press. So welcome, Haley Mitchell Huggan.
Thank you, Carrie. Great reading, Bonnie, and I love your book. I'm just enjoying it so much, so thank you for reading. This one's called Wedding, so I think it ties in, and it's an acrostic response poem. In Chagall's painting, The Wedding, reproduced in glass and hanging from my bedroom window, the bouquet rises like the moon in full bloom, all white daisies and purple stalks. Behind the bride's pink gown, her simple veil, the groom's orange checkered trousers. His arms wrapped tightly, protective around her shoulders as they ride side saddle on the white rooster, big as a horse, that carries them into their future. When night descends outside my window, night falls within the glass enamel picture, and the couple weds in darkness under the silence of stars in secret, stealing without fanfare past the sleeping Russian village. But when my sun rises, so too are the couple bathed in light, and they are different now, in a swirl of color and celebration, the rooster with a dance in his step, the village awash with good tidings. I know now it is meant for each of us, this one day to celebrate love, the simple good luck of finding one another. I embrace the cheers from the street, simple veil, being wrapped in the arms of the one I love, crescent moon rising, and the sweet feathery comfort of a big white rooster carrying us away. Thank you.
That was lovely. And does anyone else care to share something? I wondered if anyone had music tonight or anything else they might like to share or say. Cynthia, is your hand up? Yes, Cynthia. Yes. Okay, you're live.
Yes. I would like to read last, or if there's enough time, I would like to read short prose. Hear you.
Cynthia, I'm sorry, but you are, we cannot hear you. You are all garbled. There's something going on with your bandwidth. So unfortunately, we cannot hear you.
Be. Okay, how about now?
Not really. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
We could circle back to you. It looks like Shay Sanchez wants to read, and then we could come back to you, Cynthia. Perhaps you can maybe shut down some other things on your computer if you have them turned on. For instance, if you have your email open or something else open, you might want to close all that and try again. And it looks like
I just joined because I thought that it started at 7, and I apologize, but I can certainly read something. Were you going to say something, Carrie? Okay.
We had some issues earlier, so we're having to have our tech people turn on the mic each time, so there's a little lag for me to come on. However, since you missed the reading, we are reading in honor of Bonnie's work. So we are reading poems about Appalachia and Appalachian families, and the idea of weddings came up, and the idea of young couples, and the difficulty of sometimes living in Appalachia.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to take a moment, or?
I will pass it on to someone else. I don't have anything relevant that I can think of, but I did read Bonnie's wonderful work, so I'm happy to listen to other people's work. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Shay. And I think we're all in agreement that Bonnie's work is just amazing. Cynthia, did you want to try again? Okay, I don't see Cynthia indicating that. I will mention to all of you that, and Bonnie brought this up to me, the Women of Appalachia Project will be reading at West Virginia University, Morgantown this Saturday, and it's by registration, so you have to register for the event. I don't think that we will have the problems there that we have had this evening. Bonnie, it will be reading. Karen Scott will be reading. Stephanie Kendrick, I think, will be reading. I'll be there as well. We have 22 people scheduled from throughout Appalachian Ohio. Cynthia, yeah, okay. Unfortunately, Cynthia, you're having some broadband issues, and I'm so sorry. I feel terrible about that, and I'm so sorry. And very quickly, I will finish up. In order for all of you to attend the event at West Virginia University, Morgantown, you can go on the library website to find the event, or I am posting it all over Facebook and Twitter. And again, you will have to click and register in order to receive the Zoom information. Thank goodness. We will absolutely do that from now on. We're not going to be handing out our Zoom links anymore, that's for sure. But the Women of Appalachia Project would love to have you. And as I started to say, there are 22 artists who will be reading the work. And I think, Tamara, are you also in West Virginia with us? Tamara, are you reading for the West Virginia event this Saturday? Yeah, no. Okay, so she'll be at Clarksburg. Yeah. Okay, so then we'll be in Clarksburg in November. But anyway, it's wonderful. And Haley's holding up the book, our new anthology, 47 artists and 21 fine artists involved. So very excited about all of that. And maybe Haley will put some information in the chat box for those of you who might want to order the anthology. It makes the most spectacular gift. And Bonnie is included, of course, like everyone who I just mentioned. Karen is included. Stephanie Kendrick, Tamara is included there. Haley is our publisher. So I have really enjoyed having everyone here tonight. I normally do not read a poem, but I feel like maybe this has been an exceptional night. It might be fun to end with something a little bit fun. And although I loved ending with a chicken, I kind of like that idea, Haley. But I'm gonna share just one poem, even though I normally don't. But this is just a really fun sort of piece, and it's called "Of Mud and Beauty." We was concoctors, priestesses of Monimu, devotees of Wadiwa, wearers of bare feet, our crowns, garlands of black-eyed Susan and orange butterfly weed, finger swipes of fresh squished blackberries striped across our freckled faces. Scoopers of loam beside the creek, we conjured our recipe from scratch in a weather-beaten bucket. Plucks of yarrow, pink clover blossoms, spiderwebs, toadstools, clumps of lime green moss, a gnurly branch of sassafras to stir the pot. Chanting language known only to the Wadiwa, our harvest transformed into a goopy chunk aroma smelling of rot herb and adolescent female sweat. Spreading it fearlessly, ear to ear, as described in Teen Magazine, we laid ourselves down beneath white bark pines to cure, giddy as Miss America contestants, a scrap of fabric crisscrossed around our heads like a swami, like queens of the Nile. We lay still as sticks in the promise of sculpted cheekbones, a fiery afterglow. Until deer flies, blood-sucking party poopers, besieged us, their stinkometers catching wind of our heady home brew. They wheedled our lips, our nose holes, teensy scissor mouths nipping. Believing they was haints, sent us to hold back from our rightful life of glamour. We ran like wild pixies to the fat-bottomed breast of the creek, baptized our magnificent selves in the name of Manimu. So that's just a fun one. And a lot of times that's how my childhood was. I tell you, I kid you not. Really, really was. So I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I especially want to thank the City of Athens and Arts West for hosting us. And in particular, I want to thank Scott and Ryan for all their help in assisting us with our troubles. And they are just superhuman. They truly are a big hand for all of them and all of you and everyone who shared tonight. And in particular, Bonnie, thank you so much. I mean, Goshen Road is just one of the most beautiful novels I have truly ever read. And I'm just so proud to know you and that you're one of ours, you know. And I do hope that J.D. Vance fans will also read Goshen Road, because I think that will give them a more clear indication of what's actually happening here in Appalachia. So with that said, I'd like to bid you all good night. I ask that you remain vigilant. And we'll see you here on November the 19th. Please register for that event. And we will have several people reading from Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. It's going to be a marvelous night. I cannot tell you the quality of the work is just outstanding. It's so lovely to have all of you here tonight. Until we meet again, blessings.